Welcome to Who's Your Homeland, a podcast by the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. This podcast is where we discuss and explore the latest news and insights in the world of emergency management and public safety. Join me, Bridget Campbell, the IDHS Digital Communications Coordinator, as we have engaging conversations with subject matter experts and bring you the latest on how IDHS is working to provide Hoosiers with a safe, secure, and resilient Indiana. Today, we have an exciting and crucial topic lined up, the upcoming winter weather outlook. We're privileged to be joined by Sam Lashley, Warning Coordination Meteorologist for the National Weather Service Indianapolis. Sam will be shedding light on what we can expect in terms of temperature ranges, precipitation patterns, and how El Niño will affect current predictions. But that's not all. We'll also explore the intricate connection between climate change and how these factors are shaping winter weather forecasts in the Midwest, especially for Indiana, and more. So sit back, stay warm, and let's unravel the mysteries of Indiana's winter weather outlook.
My name's Sam Lashley. I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist here at the National Weather Service Indianapolis office. I've been here for 4 years now, but I've been in the Weather Service for 30 years. I grew up in Crawfordsville, Indiana, so homegrown, went to Purdue, boiler up, and just outside of my first 2 years in the Weather Service at Milwaukee, I spent my entire career here in the state of Indiana, Northern Indiana office, and then here in Indianapolis.
So can you talk about sort of kind of the overview of the current winter weather predictions for Indiana, kind of what you guys are looking at and what you guys think is coming up?
Yeah, so we always start with, is going to be an El Nino, La Nina, or neutral? And that's the temperature of the equatorial Pacific waters is what we look at. So, the Pacific Ocean near the equator, is it warmer than normal, colder than normal? So this winter it's expected to be warmer than normal, so that's considered an El Nino, and it's actually expected to be really strong. One of the strongest El Ninos that we've seen since we really began monitoring these back in 1950. So in these stronger El Nino events, there's only been about 5 or 6 since 1950 close to this magnitude. Most of those have ended up seeing very dry conditions, mild conditions, and very little snowfall across central Indiana, really across most of the state. So we sort of look at that past events, and we look at some of our long-range computer models, and they're all supporting this potential for a greater chances for above normal temperatures, below normal precipitation, and below normal snowfall. So not a great winter if you're a snow lover. Now that doesn't mean we won't see an occasional snow event, snowstorm, some snow. We could get a bunch in one event, almost like it happened last year. But when you overall look at the big picture for the entire winter, that's what we're leaning towards at this point.
So I know last year we had that really cold snap. How, I'm wondering, do extreme weather events like last year's snap inform National Weather Service's research and development efforts to enhance weather prediction models and ensuring better accuracy in forecasting?
Yeah, we use events like that to study and to get better. And the Weather Service and really the weather enterprise as a whole has gotten much better at forecasting these events, not only days out, but really more than a week out in advance. And this one was no exception. We really started to see 8 to 10 days out the potential for a colder than normal pattern, and then by 6-7 days out it was like, this is going to be really cold, and we went from a mild season up to that point to the very cold air. So after these events, we do after action reports, what worked, what didn't. Our computer modelers go back and look at how the computer models did. They try and find areas where they could maybe upgrade or where the physics behind the models didn't do so well. And, we're seeing more extreme events, which we'll talk about, but that just sort of helps tweak these models to get better and better. We're seeing some great new tools here on the local level that allows us to give some confidence to these outbreaks. But when it comes to the big temperature extremes, in the summer, the big hot air masses, in the winter, the very bitter cold air masses, we're really starting to see those with confidence 8, 9, 10 days out.
Can you talk a little bit about how, obviously, the correlation between climate change, these kind of extreme weather patterns and how their combined impact is on the winter weather in the Midwest?
So there's still a lot of debate and uncertainty with how the climate change affects day-to-day weather and the shorter-term weather effects. But what we do know is happening is the atmosphere is getting warmer, so it's holding more moisture. So our winters haven't been as cold and extreme. We'll get the short bursts like we saw last winter, but we're not seeing that sustained cold and snowy for the entire winter. And that's a part of the climate change. The warming climate, our nighttime lows are much warmer. When it's a warmer winter, the atmosphere can hold more moisture. So we're seeing more heavy rainfall events in the wintertime. And that's a problem because our vegetation's dormant. We don't have the corn that soaks up a lot of the rain and the moisture. So when we get those rainfall events, it leads to a lot of runoff, which leads to a lot of flooding. And then maybe you do get a period of cold temperatures, and that high water then freezes. And now you're dealing with flooded homes that's icing up and just a lot of problems. And we're seeing that now more frequently. And so that's sort of in the back of our heads that we can see these very short extremes. And when we start to see that in our long range models, we kind of know that's part of one of the factors with climate change that we can anticipate.
I'm wondering, how has all of these changing kind of aspects, how has it changed your prediction technologies and methodologies? How are meteorologists adapting to these changes in your forecasting techniques?
So pattern recognition, I've been in the Weather Service for 30 years. I'm seeing things now I never thought I would see when I started 30 years ago. Again, as a kid growing up in Indiana, the winters are totally different now than they were when I was a kid. So we learn from that. When we see some what appears to be oddities in our computer models, maybe 5 or 6 days out, when it sort of matches up with what we tend to expect with this climate change pattern, it gives us a little bit more confidence. One thing I can give you, it's not winter related, but the remnants of Harvey, which I don't even know if it became a hurricane, but it was definitely a tropical storm several years ago, came into Houston and South Texas. Our Weather Service computer models were showing 40 plus inches of rain in South Texas. 10, 15, 20 years ago, that would have been discounted. In this case, because of climate change and what we know can happen, that was the first time we actually went out with a forecast for 40 inches of rain from a tropical system. 45 to 50 inches of rain fell in the area where the models showed. So it's just knowing now when you see that, it's not necessarily an anomaly. It could be actually a legit factor based on what we're seeing from the atmosphere in relation to climate change.
I'm wondering, with the increasing frequency of these events, how is the National Weather Service working to improve public awareness and education about both winter weather preparedness and, in general, like these extreme events, and how to kind of help Indiana communities adapt?
Yeah, so part of my job as Warning Coordination Meteorologist, or WCM, is to go out and give talks. And we've always done spotter talks in the spring to train people on what to look for severe weather. We're now doing that a little bit for winter weather preparedness. We do some virtual webinars that's open to the public, and we talk about the impacts from severe weather, what we tend to expect here. So we try and get that education out there that, again, it's more of these short bursts, short duration, what you can expect, this extreme cold, but more likely it's just going to be 3 or 4 days and then out of here. So we're doing a lot of that. How can you prepare for this? What you should take in your cars. You know, people are on the roads now more than they ever have been. We have more comforts, and we take things for granted. Well, I've got my cell phone. If something happens, I can reach out. Well, what if the cell tower's down? If, my car, it's got a great heater, I've got heated seats. Well, if you're stuck in a snowbank, it may be hours, if not a day or two, before somebody can get there to rescue. Are you prepared? So we want people to have a safety kit in their car and be prepared for all this and not take things for advantage of or take care of. So we're trying to just get that messaging out any way that we can.
Are there any challenges you've found to connecting to people, kind of getting them to understand?
There's always challenges. I've never seen that happen before. And until it actually happens to most people or they're directly impacted, they tend to ignore it or think, sort of play the odds.
Yeah.
But the one thing we hear when it does finally impact people is like, boy, I'll never take this for granted again.
Yeah.
I didn't think it could happen to me, but now I'm going to be aware. So that's sad, and we try and take some of those stories and pass it along. But unfortunately, it's, I think, sort of the culture that we live in.
I'm wondering, what specific trends or patterns have you guys observed in recent years that are kind of reshaping how you view winter weather in Indiana?
Well, definitely the increase in rainfall in the winter months. That is huge. We go back to 2018, February. We had a 3-day period there where the northern part of the state saw between 6 and 8 inches of rain. Normal precipitation for the entire month of February is just 2 inches. And so we got 800% of normal in 3 days. Widespread flooding. Central and southern part of the states had above normal rainfall, but that's where the heaviest fell in the north. So it was devastating, record flooding on a lot of the rivers and streams, and just unbelievable impacts that we've really never seen in the past. So in the winter months, we're looking at that. Again, these short durations, people hear climate change, and then when we have a cold spell like last winter, well, so much for climate change.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't mean that cold weather and winter weather is going away entirely. It just means it's going to be short duration, not as frequent. So we're still going to experience it. So trying to get over those myths and then just get the message out that these things can still occur is what we deal with.
How are advancements in technology being leveraged by National Weather Service to gain a deeper understanding of changing weather patterns and make them more accurate for winter weather predictions in Indiana?
Well, there's a lot of great research and operational tools that we use that are coming down the pike, especially in the week 2 time period. When I started my career, anything outside 4 or 5 days, you rolled the dice. But now we're able to really dissect the models instead of just looking at one model and saying, okay, I like this model, we're going to go with that forecast. We take all of the computer weather models and we put them into something called the National Blend of Models.
Okay.
And that's sort of your averaging. So you're getting rid of the extremes and you're going with the most likely solution. But then we see some trends in those longer range data that say, you know what, these colder models are probably on the right track and we can shift that way. So we've got some statistical analysis tools that are being developed that are using some artificial intelligence even. And it statistically says, you know what, this storm system, some of the models have 8 days out. There's some statistical correlation with past models and past storm systems. So again, that pattern recognition. Now instead of me and my brain trying to remember a storm from 20 years ago, we've got the computer models saying, hey, this is very much like a storm 20 years ago. And it gives weight and it gives confidence. So then we can sort of get that messaging out to the public that, hey, you need to pay attention if you got any travels. We did that for the Christmas storm last year. I mean, what's worse than a major winter storm on some of the busiest travel days of the year? So again, we were telling people 7, 8 days out, hey, if you got travel plans, you need to be watching the forecast, maybe have contingency plans. And the other thing that was different about that storm that we rarely see, there wasn't a lot of snow. And a lot of our, again, tools and things initially were suggesting some snow, but then they quickly backed off. And we were trying to message that to the public. And I don't know if everybody got that message. And so we're working on messaging tools. How can we better communicate these different or extreme or not the usual weather patterns to the public? So we've got some new tools with social media graphics and things like that we're working on. So there's a lot of changes in the weather enterprise right now that's pretty exciting. And where we're going to be in 10 to 15 years, I think is going to be pretty impressive.
How does the National Weather Service collaborate with local government agencies, emergency management agencies, community organizations in Indiana to help develop comprehensive winter weather preparedness plans?
I'm very fortunate. We have a great relationship with all of our state partners, county partners, Indiana Department of Homeland Security. We have a great working relationship, because we're all planning for the same thing, the safety of people across the state, preparedness, mitigation. Our emergency managers are fantastic. Our local media works with us to get the messaging out there. So we have workshops, not only for winter weather, but ahead of the spring season as well. We go over with some new changes that are coming up for the winter season with the Weather Service. We'll make sure any new tools out there that could help in preparedness efforts are known for everybody. So we hold that sort of internal workshop with our partners. I will push out safety information. As the storm's nearing, we will hold conference calls or webinars and share our thoughts and our graphics and maybe some inside information, maybe some contingency forecasts. Because while a lot of times we have high confidence, there's always little flies in the ointment. If something very subtle changes, we could go this way. So we try and let everybody know ahead of time sort of what the best case, worst case scenario is. So great collaboration, great communication here in the state, and that makes my job so much easier. And I think it makes everybody else's job easier, the fact that we do collaborate, because not all states do this. I've talked to some of my counterparts that are jealous of the relationships that we have here in the state. So,
what advice would you give to local authorities, businesses, and residents in Indiana to work on mitigating the impact of winter this year and ensuring community safety?
Yeah, that's a great question. You definitely, if you can insulate your homes and again just be prepared. Make sure your furnace is working order. You have carbon monoxide detectors, because sadly we do see that every year. We see people that succumb to that, or fires from space heaters. So just recognize the safety rules. Be prepared ahead of time. Don't wait for that winter storm watch or warning to come out and then think, oh my gosh, I got to do this. Do we really need 2 dozen eggs and 3 gallons of milk for winter storms anymore? That's sort of the go-to. Everybody runs to the store, and so we get a run on those, because nowadays, our Department of Transportation is so fantastic at getting the roads plowed. While you want to be ready and prepared, I don't think we need to stock up and run a raid on the grocery stores like we used to. And most people have enough food to get them through for several days. But, be thinking ahead. We put outlooks out days in advance. So, maybe you're going to the grocery store for your normal grocery. Maybe, then, sort of stock up slowly and have things on hand for that. When it comes to traveling, have those safety kits in your car. Have a shovel in there. Have a bag of kitty litter in case you do get stuck. Flashlights, some extra canned food, extra blankets. Anything you might need to maybe, spend 18 hours or so in your vehicle and to stay warm. So it's just planning ahead and knowing what you need in the winter storm and not waiting until that storm's upon you to get ready for it.
How can jurors actively contribute to weather data collection efforts, helping meteorologists better understand local climate patterns and improve winter weather forecasts?
I love this question.
Okay.
So, several different ways. First of all, our Weather Spotter training class. We go out to several counties. We also host some virtual online for people that want to travel, but we train people on what to look for in the sky ahead of severe weather. So cloud features, what products online, outlooks, how to be prepared, what to call into the Weather Service, how to report, how not to get fooled, because there's some cloud features that fool people that haven't been trained. So it's about a 2-hour training class, and we encourage everyone to do this. We have children 10, 12, 13 years old who love weather. They come with their parents and they do this. We have senior citizens, retired, and we just encourage anybody that has an interest in weather, if not to actually report to us, just learn more about severe weather and preparedness. We also have a program called COCO-ROS, called the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. Again, for all ages. But this is a citizen science program where we teach people how to take rainfall and snowfall measurements and report that to a national database. There's over 22,000 observers across the country that volunteer and do this every day. And then we use that data after a big rain event. We look to see where the heavy rain fell. Do we need to put out flood warnings for certain areas, flood watches? In the wintertime, we look at the snow. Did it verify our forecast? Where did we miss? So we use it for verification. And again, families do this, people of all ages, and the data is really used. I also put a plug in for this for homeschooled families or even for teachers. The data is free, so even for anybody else that just needs weather data, you can go to the COCO-ROS website and you can look at this information for free. So it's fun for schools to use, for STEM education activities. but then at the same time, we've got businesses that use it to track this weather information. So great, fantastic program. And those are the two big ways people can contribute directly to the Weather Service as volunteers.
Gotcha. I'm thinking, I know one of the biggest questions I get, because I handle our social media, what is the difference between a watch and an advisory?
Yes. So in about 2 to 3 years, advisories are actually going to go away.
Okay.
We're getting rid of them. They're going to be replaced by, right now, what we're calling plain language statements. They haven't come up with a true term. But instead of saying, okay, a winter weather advisory is in effect today for 3 to 5 inches of snow, we're just going to tell you, hey, we're expecting 3 to 5 inches of snow today. Travel could be hazardous at times. Slow down and take precautions.
Okay.
So in the past, an advisory was 3 to 5 inches of snow, and a winter storm warning was 6 inches or more of snow. So you had to make this distinction. Maybe we thought we were going to get 3 to 5 in central Indiana, but northern Indiana just thought 2 to 4. So we'd have advisory up and they didn't, and it was confusing. So now we just all put out a statement that tells you exactly how much snow is going to fall and what might happen.
Makes sense.
You know, weird concept. We just tell you what's going to happen. So we think that's going to lead to less confusion, but it's going to take time to change all this. Our criteria for winter storm warning is changing a little bit. It used to be 6 inches of snow in 12 hours or 8 inches of snow in 24 hours. Now we're going just to a straight 5-inch amount for an event, but where there's impacts. So we're going to weigh, okay, is this 5 inches of snow going to be light and fluffy with not a lot of impacts in the middle of the night? Or is it going to be a heavy wet snow with some freezing rain at rush hour? So we might issue a winter storm warning for that one, but not for the other one because of impacts. So that's a change, and it's going to give more flexibility to our forecasters for what products put out there. And I think that's going to make sense. But again, that's going to be probably 2025-ish before we get rid of the advisories entirely. So you'll still see them from now. But it's really anytime we think there's going to be some impacts that aren't necessarily life-threatening unless you don't obey, let's say, by slowing down.
Yeah.
And you could get yourself in danger. Versus a winter storm warning, you're definitely going to be life-threatening conditions if you go out in that. So that's sort of the long story for the distinction between the two and what's coming up with it.
Gotcha. I think one of my last big questions is, what are the key priorities and initiatives looking into the future that the National Weather Service is undertaking to kind of address all of the challenges that we've talked about in predictions and these changing weather and ensuring the safety and well-being of Hoosiers and other Midwest regions?
So every year now we put out a roadmap for the Weather Service where we're going to go in the next 1, 3, and 5 years. And then every year we're updating that. So the priorities now are to continue to improve on those weather models, improve on our messaging, what we call our decision support services for emergency managers and people that have to make weather decisions based on, let's say, a big concert and public safety. So we're really working on improving that, being more efficient, improving our verification, getting even better at our forecast. The big one, though, we're really taking on, it's just started here in the last year, is working with those communities that are underserved or vulnerable. There's organizations that serve those, and we're really going to be reaching out to these organizations and partnering with them and maybe doing weather training that they can then take out into the community and, what is needed from us. A lot of times, these people don't get our messaging. Spanish is the second most spoken language in Indiana. So we have a new Spanish website where our products are automatically translated via artificial intelligence. We're one of the first in the country to have this. We're providing our warnings in Spanish on social media. We hope to have a workshop here in the summer coming up with our organizations that work with these communities and have a brainstorming session. What is needed from us? What else can we do? Things like that. So the future of the Weather Service is to make sure everyone has access to weather data in a way they can understand it, and where are our shortfalls, what can we do better. So that's a big part. We actually have a program leader here in the office that is taking that on. If anybody has an underserved or underrepresented community out there, wants to reach out to us and work with us, we would be happy to talk with them.
How do they reach out to you?
sam.lashley@noaa.gov. It's just that simple, and email's the best way to catch me, and then I can put them in touch with our program leader, and we can go from there.
Are there any programs that you want to highlight that are coming up?
So definitely our spotter talks. That schedule will be on our website, usually around mid-January, and there's numerous ones, not only in central Indiana, but all across the state from other offices, so people can do that. Just keep an eye on our website, because anything that we're going to do that's going to be coming up, the eclipse is coming up in April 8th of 2024. Again, we'll be working with our partners, making sure weather information is out there, because weather usually is a big part of that. Forecasting cloud cover is very difficult, but that's going to have a huge impact on where people are going, where they're traveling, when they're traveling. But we sort of go into the climatology of past April 8th and what the weather was like. And unfortunately, 70% of the past April 8ths have been mostly cloudy in Indiana. So odds aren't great here, but you never know.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Just like people to stay aware, prepare. We're happy to come out and do talks for larger groups, safety. So again, I'm the contact for that. Any way to train people on weather observing or on preparedness and safety areas, I am more than happy to do that. We would love to get more law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, those people that are out on the front lines trained in weather safety and preparedness. So we've got a 30-minute show, an hour show, and a 2-hour show. So, and I know through the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, there is certified training for 2 hours, credit hours for this type of training. So happy to work with groups to do that.
Sweet. Thank you so much for letting me come out to talk to you today.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming out. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Who's Your Homeland. We hope you found our discussion with Sam Lashley enlightening and empowering. Remember, you can stay updated on the latest weather forecasts and preparedness tips by visiting weather.gov/IND. Be sure to follow them on Facebook at U.S. National Weather Service Indianapolis, Indiana, and on Twitter at NWS Indianapolis. This podcast has been a production of the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find our full catalog at on.in.gov/Who's Your Homeland. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at IndianaDHS and on Twitter at IDHS. We will see you in the next episode. Until then, stay informed, stay prepared, and take control of your safety.